The fire is still burning, but one person has not risen. Everyone else is already moving. Someone is collecting fuel. Someone is preparing food. A child is calling for attention. Tracks outside the shelter must be examined before the sun climbs higher. But the person beside the fire does not move. Their skin feels hot. Their breathing is shallow. They have not eaten. And no one knows whether the illness will pass by tomorrow or spread through the entire group. There is no doctor, no pharmacy, no thermometer, no laboratory, no ambulance waiting beyond the trees. But that does not mean ancient humans did nothing when someone became sick. They watched, they remembered, they cleaned wounds, supported broken bones, prepared plants, shared food, carried water, kept people warm, and sometimes they stayed beside someone who could no longer contribute anything except the need to be cared for. The real danger was not only the illness, it was what happened to the group when one person could no longer work. First, forget the idea that ancient humans were constantly healthy because they lived naturally. Their bodies faced infection, parasites, injuries, hunger, smoke, cold, heat, childbirth, contaminated water, animal attacks, and diseases that could spread between people. A cut could become infected. A tooth could decay. A broken bone could prevent travel. A fever could weaken someone within hours. A stomach illness could drain the body of water. Even a small injury could become deadly if it stopped a person from walking, gathering food, carrying fuel, or escaping danger. Ancient people did not understand bacteria, viruses, or internal anatomy in the modern scientific way, but they understood patterns. They knew that some wounds became swollen, that certain foods caused sickness, that some water sources were safer than others, that fever changed the body, that coughing could move through a camp, that a person who rested sometimes recovered, and that someone who continued walking on an injured leg could make the damage worse. Imagine that you're living with a small hunter-gatherer group around 40,000 years ago. The exact response to sickness depends on the region, climate, available plants, traditions, and knowledge of the group. There is no single ancient medicine. But the day begins with observation. Someone touches the sick person's face, listens to the breathing, looks at the eyes, checks the mouth, asks where the pain is, examines the skin, searches for swelling, blood, a bite, a rash, or an old wound that has changed. The body gives signs. The group may not know the invisible cause, but experienced people can recognize when something is wrong. A fever feels different from ordinary tiredness. A deep wound smells different when it begins to rot. A broken bone changes the shape of a limb. A person losing too much blood becomes pale, weak, confused, and cold. Knowledge begins with noticing what happened before. Someone remembers another person who had the same cough, which food they ate, how long the illness lasted, which treatment helped, which treatment failed. Ancient medicine is not written in books, it is stored in memory. That makes experienced people valuable. An older person may not run quickly or carry as much food, but may recognize an illness that younger people have never seen. A caregiver may know which plant calms pain, how tightly to wrap a wound, when to move an injured limb, when to leave it alone. If that person dies, the group loses more than one body. It loses part of its medical knowledge. Now imagine the sickness begins with a cut. The injury may have come from a stone tool, a sharp bone, a thorn, an animal tooth, or a fall against rock. At first, it looks small. Blood runs across the skin. The wound must be pressed. Dirt, hair, and broken material may need to be removed. Water may be used if clean water is available. A covering may be made from plant fiber, hide, moss, soft material, or another substance known to the group. The goal is practical. Stop the bleeding. Protect the opening, reduce movement. Keep more dirt from entering. But every step carries risk. The hands touching the wound may be dirty. The water may contain contamination. The covering may trap moisture. A plant used to help may irritate the skin. There is no sterile package waiting to be opened. The group works with what the landscape provides. Some wounds close, others become hot and swollen. Pain spreads, pus appears. The injured person develops fever. Without antibiotics, an infection can move beyond the wound and threaten the entire body. The group may reopen or clean the injury, apply heat or cold. Use known plants, encourage rest, but sometimes the infection continues. Ancient care can be skilled and still fail. Now the injury is a broken bone. The person has fallen while climbing, hunting, carrying food, crossing rough ground, or escaping an animal. The limb bends incorrectly. The pain is immediate movement, becomes impossible. People can recognize that the bone needs support. Branches, bark, hide, fiber, or other materials can hold the limb more steadily. The group may carry the injured person. Build a simple support. Remain in one place longer than planned, or change the route to avoid difficult ground. A broken bone is not only a medical problem, it changes the movement of everyone. Hunter-gatherer life often requires travel, food changes with the season, water may become scarce, animals move weather changes. A group that remains beside an injured person may lose access to what it needs. A group that moves may cause more pain or damage. Care becomes a decision about risk, shared by everyone. Archaeologists have found ancient bones that healed after serious injuries. Healing does not prove exactly who provided care or how, but some injuries would have made survival alone extremely difficult. A person who could not walk, hunt, or feed themselves may have lived because others brought food, offered protection, and allowed time for recovery. That means compassion was not invented by cities, hospitals, or written religion. Care is older than all of them, but care also has a cost. Someone must gather extra food, carry extra water, watch the patient, take over missing work, move more slowly. A sick person may consume limited supplies while producing none. The group must decide that this person still matters. Now the illness begins inside the stomach. Perhaps someone drank from contaminated water. A piece of meat spoiled. A plant was misidentified. Parasites entered the body. The person vomits. Diarrhea begins. Strength disappears quickly. A modern person may see stomach illness as a few miserable days. In an ancient camp, it can become a survival emergency. The body loses water. The patient becomes weak. Walking becomes difficult. Food cannot be kept down. Flies gather waste must be kept away from the water and food. The caregiver must clean the patient, then return to cooking, carrying, or child care. If hands are not cleaned well, the sickness may spread. One person becomes three. Three become half the camp. The group may not understand the microscopic path of infection, but people can notice that illness follows contact, shared food, or a particular water source. They may move camp, avoid certain places, separate the sick person when possible, burn or discard contaminated material, use smoke, heat, washing, or distance. These methods do not always work, but they show that people can learn cause and effect without seeing the cause itself. Then comes fever. The person shivers, even though the skin is hot, they ask for warmth. Later, they push coverings away. They speak strangely, wake in fear, see things that are not present. The group cannot measure the temperature, but they can feel the change. They may offer water, cool the skin, keep the person near the fire, move them away from smoke, use plants or prepared substances associated with pain, sleep, or fever. Some remedies may genuinely help, others may do nothing. Some may cause harm. Tradition preserves successful observations, but it can also preserve mistakes. If a person recovers after a treatment, the treatment receives credit, even if the illness would have passed on its own. If the person dies, the group may blame the severity of the illness, an enemy, a broken rule, a spirit, or the timing of the treatment. Medicine and belief are not always separate. A physical remedy may be used beside ritual, song, touch, smoke, pigment, objects, or spoken words. The ritual can provide comfort and social support even when it cannot remove the disease. For the sick person, knowing that others are present may matter. Fear changes when suffering is shared. Now consider pain. There is no bottle of modern pain medicine. A toothache can last for weeks. A damaged joint can hurt every time the weather changes. Burns, wounds, childbirth, headaches, and infections can produce pain that cannot be removed completely. People may use rest, pressure, massage, heat, cold, splinting, plant preparations, fermented drinks, or other locally known methods. The effectiveness varies. The dosage is uncertain. A useful plant in a small amount may be poisonous in a larger amount. Different parts of the same plant may have different effects. Season changes strength, preparation changes strength. Medical knowledge is inseparable from botanical knowledge. You must know what grows nearby, when to collect it, which part to use, how to prepare it, and how much the body can survive. This knowledge can save a life. The wrong knowledge can end one. Then someone suffers a damaged tooth. The pain begins while chewing. Soon it continues even when the mouth is still. The face swells, sleep becomes difficult. Eating becomes painful. There is no dentist, no x-ray, no numbing injection. The group may clean around the tooth, use plants, apply pressure, or attempt removal if the situation becomes unbearable. But removing a tooth is dangerous. The tooth may break, bleeding may continue. The wound may become infected. Doing nothing may be equally dangerous if infection spreads into the jaw or beyond. A single tooth can weaken a hunter more effectively than a predator. The person eats less, sleeps badly, becomes irritable, loses strength. Pain changes the entire day, even when no injury is visible. Now the sickness is carried in the lungs. Smoke hangs around fires and inside shelters. Cold air irritates breathing. People sleep close together. A cough begins. Then another person coughs. There is no test to identify the disease. The sound is all the group has. A mild illness may pass. A serious infection may deepen. The patient struggles to breathe, cannot walk far, cannot speak for long. The group may provide warmth, rest, fluids, and known remedies. But if the lungs begin to fail, there is no oxygen machine, no emergency transport, no medicine designed for the exact cause. The body must recover with the support available, or it does not recover. Children are especially vulnerable. A baby cannot explain where it hurts. The signs are crying, silence, poor feeding, unusual breathing, fever, weakness, or a body that no longer responds normally. An adult must interpret these changes quickly. A sick child also requires constant attention. Someone must carry the child, feed them, keep them warm, clean them. Remain awake when others sleep. The caregiver becomes exhausted. Other tasks are delayed, fuel runs low, gathering is reduced, another child receives less attention. One illness reaches through the whole group. Childbirth creates its own danger. Ancient women give birth without modern surgery, blood transfusions, antibiotics, or sterile hospitals, but they do not necessarily give birth alone. Experienced women may assist. They understand positions, timing, pressure, warmth, cutting, cleaning, and the signs of trouble through knowledge passed between generations. Many births end safely. Others involve bleeding, infection, obstruction, injury, or a baby who cannot breathe. When something goes wrong, options are limited. The mother may die. The child may die. Both may survive but remain weak. Recovery requires food, rest, warmth, and help. While daily work continues, illness never arrives alone. It removes labor, creates fear, uses food, consumes time, forces movement to slow. A sick hunter means less meat. A sick gatherer means fewer plants. A sick caregiver leaves children vulnerable. A sick toolmaker leaves damaged weapons unrepaired. A sick older person may take irreplaceable knowledge with them. This is why ancient health belongs to the whole group. There is no medical profession separated completely from daily life. Care comes from relatives, companions, experienced elders, skilled healers, or anyone present when the need begins. Some people may become especially respected for knowledge of plants, wounds, childbirth, bones, or ritual, but medicine still depends on the household and group. The patient eats because someone shares, rests because someone takes over, survives because others remain nearby. Then the illness continues for weeks. The person does not die, but they do not fully recover. A leg heals badly. A joint stiffens, vision weakens. A hand loses movement. The person must find another way to contribute. They may make tools, prepare food, watch children, teach, repair objects, recognize plants, remember routes. Human value does not depend only on perfect physical strength. A group that keeps injured and older members alive also keeps their knowledge. What looks like a burden in one moment may become protection later. Now, the myth must be corrected. Ancient humans did not treat sickness only with superstition. They used observation, experience, physical care, plant knowledge, splints, cleaning, rest, warmth, food, and social support. But they also did not possess a secret natural medicine that cured everything. Many infections were deadly. Pain could last for years. Parasites were common. Childbirth was dangerous. Small wounds could become fatal. Treatments could help, fail, or cause harm. Their strength was not that they never became sick. It was that illness did not automatically remove a person from the group. Could you survive an ancient illness? Possibly a mild fever might pass. A clean fracture might heal. A supportive group might carry you through weeks of weakness. But you would arrive without the knowledge stored in their hands. You might drink from the wrong source, use the wrong plant, ignore a small wound, remove a covering too soon, move on a damaged leg. Assume that a fever needs only sleep, or believe that because no danger can be seen, no danger is present, the fire is still burning. But one person has not risen. Their skin is hot, their breathing is shallow. The group has food to find, tools to repair, water to carry, and children to protect, yet someone stays beside the sick person, touches their face, offers water, adjusts, the covering listens, to each breath. Before doctors existed, ancient humans did not defeat every illness. They survived many of them because sickness was never faced entirely alone.